She was lost in the woods. A cowboy found her and said, "You look like you've been out here too long." She parked her car near the edge of the forest just before noon, locked it without thinking, and stepped onto the narrow path that slipped quietly between tall trees. The air was cool, and the smell of pine felt calming. For the first few minutes, everything felt right. She had been carrying too much inside her for too long. Work pressure, family expectations, unanswered questions about where her life was going, all of it followed her everywhere. The woods felt like a place where none of that could reach her. No phones ringing, no voices telling her what to do, just her steps and the soft sound of leaves moving above her. The trail looked clear at first. The ground was packed down from other walkers and small markers were tied to tree branches. She noticed them without really paying attention. Her mind was elsewhere. She walked deeper, breathing slower, feeling lighter with every step. She told herself she would turn back soon. Just a little farther, she thought. Just until the noise in her head went quiet. At some point, she stopped checking the time. Her phone was still in her pocket, but she did not look at it. She followed a bend in the path, then another. The trees grew closer together, blocking more sunlight. The air felt cooler here, and the forest seemed thicker, heavier. Still, she kept walking, trusting that the path would lead her back when she was ready. When she finally decided to turn around, she felt something shift inside her. The path behind her did not look the same. She paused, confused, and turned in a slow circle. Trees, bushes, shadows, everything looked similar. She laughed quietly to herself, trying to stay calm. She told herself she had simply walked a little farther than usual. It happens, she thought, just walk back. She chose a direction that felt right and started moving. After several minutes, the feeling of calm did not return. Instead, a small knot of worry formed in her chest. She looked for the trail markers she remembered, but they were gone. The ground no longer showed clear footprints. The path felt less like a path and more like open forest. She stopped again and pulled out her phone. The screen lit up, but there was no signal. She frowned and checked the battery. It was already low. She had not planned to be out long, so she had not charged it fully. She considered using the map, but without service, it would not help much. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, telling herself not to waste the battery. The woods were quiet in a way that felt different now. Before, the silence had been peaceful. Now it felt like it was watching her. Every sound seemed louder, her breathing, her footsteps, the snap of a twig under her shoe. She tried to walk with confidence, but her steps slowed. She called out once just to hear her voice. It echoed briefly and then disappeared. No answer came back. She did not call again. Somehow the silence that followed felt heavier. As the afternoon moved on, the light began to change. The sun dipped lower and long shadows stretched across the ground. The temperature dropped slightly. She wrapped her arms around herself, not because she was cold, but because she felt small. She tried to think clearly. Panicking would not help. She remembered advice she had once heard. Stay calm, conserve energy, don't wander too much. But standing still felt impossible. Doing nothing made her thoughts run wild. She chose to keep moving, hoping she would reach a clearing, a road, anything familiar. Her steps became slower as time passed. The ground was uneven and roots stuck out in places she did not expect. She stumbled once and caught herself on a tree. Her heart raced and she stood still for a long moment, breathing hard. That was when fear truly settled in. Not a sudden fear, but a steady one that wrapped around her thoughts. She realized she had not eaten since morning. Her mouth felt dry. She checked her pockets and found nothing useful. No food, no water, no flashlight. She had come out unprepared, thinking only of escape, not safety. The thought made her feel foolish, but there was no point blaming herself now. The forest seemed endless. Every direction looked the same. She tried to mark her path by breaking small twigs or moving stones, but even that felt uncertain. She could not be sure she was not walking in circles. The idea made her stop again, pressing her hands against her knees as she bent forward, trying to steady herself. She thought about home, about her bed, her kitchen, the normal sounds of daily life she usually took for granted. She wondered if anyone would notice she was gone. She had not told anyone where she was going. The thought sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the air. As daylight faded, the woods changed again. Colors softened, then darkened. Shapes became harder to read. She knew staying out overnight would be dangerous, even if she did not know exactly how. The fear of the unknown was enough. She searched for a place that looked safer, somewhere with fewer branches, a spot near a large tree that could block wind. She sat down carefully, her legs trembling. The ground was cold beneath her. She hugged herself and tried to think of a plan for morning. Maybe she could climb to higher ground and look for smoke or roads. Maybe she could hear distant sounds of people or vehicles. She held onto these thoughts tightly, like promises. The forest noises grew louder as the light disappeared. She told herself they were normal, that the woods had always sounded like this. Still, her heart beat faster with every unfamiliar sound. She kept her eyes open, watching shadows move with the wind. Sleep came in short, broken moments. Each time she closed her eyes, her body jolted awake again. She dreamed of walking paths that never ended, of calling out and never being heard. When she finally opened her eyes for good, the sky was lighter, but the sun had not fully risen. Her body felt stiff and sore. Her throat was dry and her head ached. She pushed herself to stand, using a tree for support. The new day brought a small sense of hope. Daylight meant visibility. Visibility meant options. She chose a direction based on the slope of the land, thinking downhill might lead somewhere. She moved slowly, careful with each step. Hunger gnawed at her now, making her feel weak. She tried not to think about how long it had been since she last ate or drank. As the hours passed, the hope she felt in the morning began to thin. No clearing appeared. No road. No sign that anyone had been there recently. Her steps grew heavier, her thoughts slower. She stopped more often to rest, leaning against trees, closing her eyes for a moment at a time. She spoke to herself quietly, not wanting to feel alone. She reminded herself to keep going, to stay alert. She promised herself that she would not give up. Even when fear whispered doubts into her mind, she pushed them away. By the time the sun began to lower again, she understood something clearly. This was no longer just a walk gone wrong. She was truly lost. The realization settled over her like a weight, steady and undeniable. She stood still, surrounded by trees that looked no different from one another, and felt the full truth of her situation for the first time. The woods did not care who she was or why she had come. They simply existed, vast and silent. Still, somewhere deep inside her, a small voice refused to be quiet. As long as she was breathing, there was a chance. She straightened her shoulders, took a careful breath, and prepared herself for another night, holding onto the hope that tomorrow would bring something different. She woke up before the sun fully rose, not because she felt rested, but because her body would not let her sleep anymore. The cold had settled deep into her bones during the night. Her back hurt from the hard ground and her legs felt stiff and weak. For a few seconds she forgot where she was. Then she saw the trees above her, tall and unmoving, and reality returned all at once. Her mouth felt dry, like it was full of dust. She swallowed, hoping for relief, but it only made her throat hurt more. She stood slowly, afraid her legs might give out. The forest looked different in the early light. Mist hung low between the trees, and everything felt quiet, as if the woods were holding their breath. She told herself that today had to be better. It had to be. Sitting down and waiting did not feel like an option. She needed water, and she needed a way out. She remembered hearing that streams often run downhill, so she decided to follow the slope again. It was not a strong plan, but it was something. She walked carefully, watching each step. The ground was damp and leaves slipped under her shoes. She moved slowly, stopping often to catch her breath. Every movement took more effort than it had the day before. Hunger had become a steady ache, not sharp but constant, like a quiet reminder that her body was running out of fuel. As she walked, her thoughts drifted. She thought about how easily her normal life had slipped away. Just 2 days ago, she had been worried about things that now felt small and distant. Messages she had not answered, work tasks she had put off. None of that mattered here. Out here, the only important thing was staying alive. After what felt like hours, she heard something different. A faint sound, soft but steady. She stopped and listened. Her heart began to beat faster. It sounded like water. She moved toward it carefully, afraid it might disappear if she rushed. The sound grew clearer as she walked, and soon she found a small stream cutting through the forest. It was not wide, but it was moving. She felt a rush of relief so strong it made her eyes sting. She knelt beside it without thinking and dipped her hands into the water. It was cold, but she did not care. She drank slowly at first, then a little faster, careful not to make herself sick. The water gave her a small burst of energy, but it did not last long. Still, she knew the stream could help her. Water meant life. It also meant a possible path. She decided to follow it, hoping it would lead to something larger, a river, a road, a sign of people. She walked beside the stream for most of the day. Sometimes it disappeared behind rocks or trees, and she had to search for it again. Each time she found it, she felt a small sense of victory. These little wins helped her keep going. The forest, however, did not make things easy. The ground became rougher, filled with stones and roots. She stumbled more than once and scraped her hands when she fell. She cleaned them in the stream as best she could, wincing at the sting. She could not afford an injury. Every part of her body needed to keep working. As the day wore on, her energy faded again. She had nothing to eat and her stomach felt tight and empty. She tried to ignore it, focusing instead on each step, each breath. She told herself stories in her head, anything to distract from the discomfort. She remembered trips she had taken, people she had laughed with, moments that made her feel warm inside. By late afternoon, clouds rolled in and the light dimmed. The air grew cooler and a light breeze moved through the trees. She knew she needed to think about shelter again. Walking in the dark would be dangerous, especially now that she was weaker. She searched for a spot that felt safe. Somewhere close to the stream but not too close in case the water rose during the night. She found a cluster of trees that blocked some of the wind and sat down slowly. Her body felt heavy, like it was made of stone. That night felt longer than the first. Hunger made it hard to rest, and every sound pulled her back to full awareness. She wrapped her arms around herself and tried to stay warm. She watched the sky through the gaps in the trees, counting the stars when they appeared, then losing them again behind clouds. She thought about whether anyone was looking for her. She imagined her car still parked where she left it, quiet and alone. Would someone notice it? Would they think to search the woods? The questions had no answers, and that made them harder to bear. Morning came slowly. When she opened her eyes, her body protested. She felt weaker than before, and standing took all her effort. She drank from the stream again, grateful for it, but water alone was not enough. She decided to keep following the stream. Turning back felt pointless, and staying still felt worse. She walked with shorter steps now, stopping often. Sometimes she leaned against a tree and closed her eyes just for a moment, telling herself not to sit down too long. As the hours passed, her thoughts became less clear. She caught herself talking out loud more often, saying simple things like "just a little farther" or "you're doing okay." Hearing her own voice helped her feel real, grounded. At one point, she thought she heard a distant sound that did not belong to the forest. It was faint and unclear. She stopped and listened, holding her breath. The sound did not come again. She stood there for a long time, unsure whether it had been real or just hope playing tricks on her mind. That moment shook her more than she expected. She realized how badly she wanted to be found. How deeply she needed to believe that someone somewhere was close enough to hear her. The afternoon sun filtered weakly through the trees. Her steps slowed even more. Each one felt like work. She knew she could not keep this pace for much longer. Her body was reaching its limits and she could feel it. As evening approached again, she found a spot near the stream and sat down heavily. She did not have the strength to search for anything better. She drank a little water and leaned back against a tree, staring at the sky. Fear crept in quietly, not the sharp fear from before, but a dull, heavy one. She wondered how many days a person could last like this. She pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the simple act of breathing. That night, she dreamed of voices. Soft, familiar voices calling her name. She woke suddenly, her heart racing, only to find the forest unchanged. Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. Crying would only take more energy. When morning came, she felt different. Not better, but calmer. Something inside her had shifted. She understood now that survival was not just about moving forward. It was about paying attention, conserving strength, and holding onto hope even when it felt thin. She stood slowly, took a deep breath, and looked around. The woods stretched out in every direction, quiet and vast. She did not know how much longer she could keep going, but she knew one thing for sure: she was not ready to give up. With that thought steady in her mind, she took another careful step forward, following the stream, trusting that somewhere beyond the trees something, or someone, was waiting. By the morning of the fourth day, her body felt like it no longer belonged to her. Every movement took effort, as if she were pushing against something heavy and unseen. Her legs trembled when she stood, and her hands shook when she tried to drink from the stream. The water still helped, but not the way it had before. It no longer gave her strength, only kept her from feeling worse. She moved slowly now, carefully placing each step. The forest felt wider than ever, as if it had stretched during the night. Trees stood in long rows, silent and watching. The air was cool, and a thin fog drifted low to the ground, making everything feel distant and unreal. She followed the stream because it was the only guide she had left. Without it, she knew she would have no sense of direction at all. Sometimes the water disappeared under rocks, and panic rose in her chest until she found it again. Each time she lost sight of it, even for a moment, fear pressed down on her like a weight. Her thoughts were slower now. Words came with effort. She caught herself stopping in the middle of steps, unsure of what she had meant to do next. That scared her more than the hunger or the cold. She knew enough to understand that her body was running low on strength. She tried to focus on small things. The sound of water moving over stones, the way light filtered through leaves, the feeling of the ground under her feet. She told herself that if she could just keep moving, even slowly, something would change. Around midday, she tripped over a root and fell hard onto her side. The fall knocked the breath out of her, and she lay there for a long moment, staring up at the sky through the branches. Pain spread across her hip and shoulder, sharp at first, then dull. For a few seconds, she did not try to get up. The ground felt strangely comfortable, cool and solid. A dangerous thought crossed her mind, that resting here might be easier than standing again. The idea frightened her enough to push her into motion. She rolled onto her hands and knees and slowly pulled herself upright, using a nearby tree for support. Her body ached, but she could still walk. That was what mattered. The afternoon dragged on. Time felt stretched, like it no longer followed normal rules. Minutes felt like hours. She no longer wondered what day it was. Days had lost their meaning. There was only before dark and after dark, walking and resting. As the sun moved lower, she noticed something different in the distance. At first, she thought it was just another shadow, another trick of tired eyes. But the shape did not move like the others. It stood taller, darker, and solid. She stopped and stared, her heart beating faster. She blinked several times, afraid it would disappear. It didn't. Slowly, she took a few steps forward. That was when she heard it, a sound that did not belong to the forest. It was faint at first, but clear enough to make her breath catch. A steady rhythm, not wind, not water, something heavier, something alive. She stood still, afraid to move, afraid to believe. The sound came again, closer this time. Her heart began to race, not with fear, but with something close to hope. She wanted to call out, but her throat felt tight and her voice felt weak. She tried anyway. "Hello," she said, barely louder than a whisper. The word seemed to disappear as soon as it left her mouth. Panic rose again. What if she imagined the sound? What if it passed by without seeing her? She gathered what little strength she had left and called out again, louder this time. Her voice cracked, but it carried. A few seconds passed, then more movement. Branches shifted, leaves rustled, And then she saw him. A man on horseback emerged from between the trees. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, worn and dusty. His clothes were simple and practical, marked by long days outdoors. The horse beneath him moved calmly as if the forest was an old friend. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He looked at her carefully, taking in her condition, the dirt on her clothes, the way she stood unevenly, the exhaustion written on her face. She felt suddenly exposed, aware of how she must look, weak, lost, barely holding herself upright. He swung down from the horse quickly but calmly, keeping his movements slow so he wouldn't scare her. Up close, she could see the lines on his face, shaped by sun and time. His eyes were steady, focused. "You look like you've been out here too long," he said. His voice was quiet but firm. There was no judgment in it, only concern. The sound of a human voice directed at her broke something inside her. Her knees weakened and she swayed. Before she could fall, he stepped forward and caught her arm, steadying her. "It's okay," he said gently. "I've got you." The tears just came, silent and unstoppable, sliding down her face. He did not rush her. He guided her to sit on a fallen log and knelt beside her. From his bag, he pulled out a water container and held it where she could reach. "Small sips," he said. "Take it slow." She did not care. When she finished, she felt slightly clearer, though still weak. He watched her closely, making sure she was steady. "I'm checking cattle," he explained. "They wander sometimes. Didn't expect to find anyone out here." She hesitated, then took it, eating slowly. Each bite made her feel a little more present, a little less like she might fade away. Once she had eaten, he asked her simple questions. Her name, how long she had been lost, whether she could walk. She answered as best she could, her voice quiet but steady enough. When she finished, he stood and looked around, reading the forest in a way she never could. He seemed confident, sure of his surroundings. "We're going to get you out of here," he said, not as a promise filled with hope, but as a fact. He helped her stand again, keeping a firm hand on her arm. The horse waited nearby, calm and patient. "You won't be walking much longer," he told her. "I'll help you the rest of the way." He moved with calm confidence, the kind that came from spending most of his life outdoors. She noticed it right away. Every step he took felt steady, planned. It made her feel safer without him having to say much. He adjusted the horse's position and brought it closer to her, speaking softly to it as if it understood every word. "You won't have to walk," he said. "Not like this." With effort and a small moment of fear, she was lifted onto the horse. Once seated, she felt unsteady at first, but he adjusted her position and made sure she was balanced. "Just hold the saddle," he said. "Let the horse do the work." The cowboy walked beside her at first, one hand lightly holding her leg, making sure she stayed secure. They moved slowly through the trees. From this height, the forest looked different, less threatening. Still large, but no longer endless. She noticed things she hadn't before, open spaces between trees, faint paths in the ground, signs that someone who knew the land could follow. "You did the right thing," he said after a while. "Following water helps." The only sounds were the horse's steps and the natural noises of the woods. After some time, he offered her more water. She drank slowly, doing exactly as he instructed. He watched her carefully, not in an uncomfortable way, but in a way that showed he was paying attention. "You're doing good," he said. "Just stay awake." Every now and then her eyelids grew heavy and her head dipped forward. Each time his voice brought her back. They reached a wider path as the afternoon went on. The ground was flatter here, more worn. She felt a small wave of relief. This place felt traveled, known. "Almost there," he said. Those two words meant more to her than she could explain. She didn't ask where there was. She didn't need to. All she needed was the feeling that this situation was moving toward an end. As the light began to soften, the trees thinned. She could see more sky now. The air felt different too, less closed in. Her body was tired in a deep way, but her mind felt clearer than it had in days. Eventually, she saw it. A fence line. Simple wooden posts stretching into the distance. The sight made her chest tighten with emotion. It was proof that she was back in the world again. The cowboy stopped the horse and helped her down carefully. Her legs felt weak when they touched the ground and she leaned heavily against him. He didn't rush her. He waited until she felt steady enough to stand. "There's a small place not far from here," he said. "We'll get you warm and rested." Inside, the air was warmer. The smell of wood and earth filled the space. He guided her to a chair and helped her sit. She sank into it, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. He brought her a blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth made her shiver, not from cold but from relief. She hadn't realized how tense she'd been until that moment. "Just rest," he said. "You're safe here." The warmth spread through her chest, easing the tight feeling she'd been carrying for days. After a while, he asked if she had any pain that worried her. She shook her head. Everything hurt a little, but nothing felt wrong in a serious way. He nodded, relieved. "We'll take it easy," he said. "No rushing." The sharp edges of fear faded, replaced by a gentle tiredness. She leaned back, the blanket pulled close, and let herself relax. For the first time since she had entered the woods, she allowed herself to stop trying. She didn't have to plan. She didn't have to stay alert. Someone else had taken over, and that was enough. She thought briefly about the days she had spent lost, the confusion, the hunger, the quiet fear that had followed her every step. It felt distant now, like a story that had happened to someone else. Before sleep fully claimed her, she heard his voice again. "You did well," he said. "Not everyone would have made it this far." Her eyes closed, and this time she did not force them open. She slept deeply, wrapped in warmth and quiet, knowing that when she woke, the woods would no longer be holding her. She woke slowly, not all at once, but in small pieces. First, she became aware of warmth. Then the soft weight of a blanket around her shoulders. Then the quiet. A deep, steady quiet that did not feel empty or threatening. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer surrounded by trees. Wooden walls stood nearby, and light slipped in gently through a small window. For a moment, she didn't move. She just lay there, listening to her own breathing. It felt steady, normal. That alone felt like a gift. Her body was sore, but it was a different kind of pain now. Not sharp, not urgent. The kind that came after something hard had passed. She shifted slightly and sat up, moving carefully. The room stayed still. Nothing spun, nothing faded. She was fully here. The cowboy was nearby, sitting at a small table, working quietly. When he noticed her awake, he looked up and gave a small nod. "Morning," he said. His voice sounded calm, the same as before. It grounded her. "Morning," she replied. Her voice was soft, but it didn't crack. That surprised her. He stood and brought her a cup of water. "Small sips," he reminded her. She smiled faintly and did as he said. The water tasted clean and fresh. As she drank, she felt something loosen inside her chest, like a tight knot finally giving way. "You slept a long time," he said. "That's good." It felt safe in a quiet, honest way. "How long was I out there?" she asked after a moment. "4 days, maybe a little more," he said gently. "Hard to tell exactly." This silence was different from the one in the woods. It didn't press in on her. It gave her space to think. Later, he helped her stand again. Her legs were weak but stronger than the day before. She could feel improvement, slow but real. He made sure she ate a little food, plain and warm. Each bite made her feel more like herself. As the day went on, they talked a little more. Nothing heavy. Simple things, where she was from, how long he'd been working this land. He didn't ask too many questions about why she'd gone into the woods alone. She was grateful for that. By afternoon, he told her they would head into town. There were people there who could help her further, make sure she was truly okay, and help her contact anyone who might be worried. The ride was slow and careful. She felt stronger sitting upright this time, holding the saddle with steady hands. The land opened up as they moved forward. Fields replaced trees. Open sky stretched wide above them. When they reached town, everything felt louder, brighter, faster than she remembered. People noticed her right away. Someone brought another blanket. Someone else asked questions in a calm voice. She answered as best she could. A phone was placed in her hand, fully charged. She stared at it for a moment, unsure what to do. Then she scrolled to a familiar name and pressed call. The voice on the other end broke before the first full word was spoken. That was when the reality finally settled in. She was back. She was safe. Later, when things quieted again, she found the cowboy standing just outside, adjusting the horse's gear. She walked toward him slowly. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. He shook his head lightly. "You don't have to." About every step she'd taken when she didn't think she could, about choosing to stand instead of sit, about holding on when it would have been easier not to. "Still," she said, "I won't forget this." The woods had taken her apart piece by piece, but they had also shown her something she didn't know she had: strength, quiet, steady strength. As she walked away, she carried that with her, not loudly, not proudly, just deeply.